And welcome to the hardest part of game development. One of the hardest things about finishing a game is just coming to terms with the fact that there will always be more that you wanted to do, and there will always be more that you could have done to make it better. The best way that I've found to deal with this is to follow the AAA method where you have a schedule. And on this cutoff date, you stop adding features and you start finishing your game. A concept that you really want to internalize as soon as possible is that players don't know what you set out to do. They will not notice any features that are not put into your game at all. But what they will notice is if you put a feature in and it doesn't feel complete or it doesn't feel like there's any meat to it, it's more important for you to focus on making sure that everything that's there and visible to the player is finished rather than it is adding a whole bunch of systems that might not be complete. As we established before, you don't finish a game. But what you're trying to do is make it look like you finished the game you set out to do. This is one of those few areas where video games and tabletop games are completely different. Tabletop games are usually focused on the mechanics, and the players that are doing them, they are used to using their imagination. They're used to finding the fun with each other in social capacities. But a video game person, they need to be walked through the fun. It's much more on polish and feedback and making it look like a AAA production, even if you have a small budget. With a tabletop game, you're really looking for readability. You want a well done rule book, you want really organized components. So when somebody needs information off a card, they know exactly where to look on every single card. This ties into speed of play. You don't want the players to ever have to stop and look up the rule book or stop and calculate stuff. You want the gameplay to just keep moving forward, keep moving forward. And you can do this by eliminating any mechanics that feel like they slow down the game and adding in player aids for anything that might require more reference. And also during this stage, and it's the least important of the three, you can start improving the visuals, you can add in the flavor text, you can start putting together the final polished looking product. But players are going to be much more concerned that the game mechanics feel finished. With video games, you need to focus on the bugs first. First off, game breakers, anything that stops progress, forces them to restart, you cannot have those because that will 100% ruin a player experience immediately. Second, you want to focus on commonly occurring bugs because even if you have a more severe bug, the small one will continually remind the player that, hey, the quality isn't up to what it should be. So you want to focus on things that are really commonly happening. Next, you need to focus on things like feedback. Every time the player does something of note, you want some sort of instant feedback. And finally, you also want to focus on whatever the best you can do in terms of graphics, in terms of sound, in terms of writing, because you have a lot more tools that can make even a half finished game look absolutely amazing. Your task this week is to finish your game. First thing, go through, figure out what am I not going to have time to fully implement, cut it out. Polish what remains, and sit down with new players, start getting some last minute play tests in there so you get real feedback and celebrate the fact that you have officially made your first game. Next week, we're going to focus on one final lesson about how do we learn from this and how can we make our next game even better.